Welcome back. In the last video, we focused on this concrete parking lot and the fence behind it. Before that, we worked on these two warehouses there. Before that, we were working on the non-rail served brick buildings over in the corner. So we've been going left to right. And now, before I go too much farther to the right, I want to do some scenery through this area, get track ballasted, get some details put in. And before I do that, I've got one more structure that's going to go right here. And I'm going to show you that next. That's going to be a icing track. And so I've got a kit. I've mentioned it once or twice before, but that is going to be the next project I tackle. So let's move over to the workbench and I'll show you what we got. All right, over at the workbench, I've got this kit from Fine Scale Miniatures here. This is Brett's Ice. It is kit number 50 from Fine Scale Miniatures. And a number of years ago, gosh, I guess it's been close to a decade now, my grandfather, who along with my father, really got me into model railroading, he passed away. And one of my cousins was going through some of the train stuff. You know, a lot of it was sold. We kept a few things. This was one of the things that we kept, and my cousin had it and said, hey, you know, since you're actually building a layout, maybe this is something you'd be interested in. And I told him I absolutely was, so he brought it to me. And the kit's in pretty good shape. I'm nearly certain everything's here. So I've got the instructions, and this is kind of neat. These are the wall sections for the little hut on the left-hand side of the structure. And Grandpa actually started working on this. He must have been working on it before he died. And a couple places I can see, I don't know if this is going to show up on the camera, but there's a couple places here where he did, as the instructions say. I can see where he made some of the nail holes and scribed in some cut marks for the boards and stuff. It doesn't look like he finished with it, so I'm going to go ahead and do some of that stuff to start with. And as the instructions go, this is actually where you start, is on this structure. So I'm also going to scratch it up a little bit with this wire brush and stain it to give it a little bit more of a weathered appearance. And once I've done that, I'll come in with my pounce wheel, add some more nail holes, add some more marks where boards, you know, you're not gonna have an 80-foot long board or whatever. So we'll fix all that. So that's gonna be the first part of it. Another thing I noticed, he didn't actually brace this up. So the kit did come with bracing. I'm gonna brace it up before I start staining it. So we'll start there, but you know, there's a bunch of stuff in here. These kits are really nice. Very, very detailed instructions. There's some signs you can use if you want. That's the roof stock for the cardboard stock for the roof. Whole bunch of pre-cut boards and stuff. You know, we got to construct that icing dock, so a whole lot of this stuff's already cut and ready to go. Kind of cool. A little bit of castings here, some stairs, and this part's really neat when we get to it. The bottom of this hut is actually a stone foundation. And I've never seen this technique used before, but you apparently just glue these little rocks on the foundation and give it a little simple wash as I was reading through the directions. So I've never seen that before. That's a cool technique. Looking forward to getting into this one. I've never built a Fine Scale Miniatures kit before, so that's fun anyway. Some ice blocks. But also the fact that this was my grandfather's and I'm kind of picking up where he left off with it is going to be really cool. So like I just showed in the prior clip, it's going to be right up front, featured front and center, and I'm excited to get started. All right, so picking up where Grandpa left off, I've got my chopper out and we're just cutting the bracing to fit. I'm just showing some of this. You know, it's there's a little piece to that long section I'm working on now. There's one little spot where the roof is taller on the left and shorter on the right. You got to leave a little gap in there because one of the end walls actually fits in between the bracing. So basically the thickness of the clapboard section is the gap that you leave in there. So, you know, read the instructions. I accounted for that. The diagram shows it, the instructions, I think they said it. And as you work on these kind of kits, obviously you're reading ahead. So I got all that stuff cut out. I'm just using wood glue, tight bond here. That's just what I had laying around, so that's what I grabbed. I think this cures a little quicker than some of the other wood glues, but still plenty of time to work it while I'm putting the kit together here. At least for me, that worked well. And that is a brand new blade in the X-Acto knife. So that's another important thing with the wood kit, is to use a nice sharp blade. And now we're just distressing the wood. So I started with a wire brush and scratched it up pretty good. And I think I got some good wood grain out of that, but it didn't take as much of the paint off as I wanted to. So I came back with some, I think this is 150 grit sandpaper, running the same direction as the boards to expose some of that raw wood for the stains in the next step. I should also mention that after this step, I grabbed the smallest pounce wheel I have and added some nail holes before the staining. So here we're staining. I'm using Best stains. They say it's a bottle with a blue label on the front. It says Vetero, but they are by Best. And I'm using murky brown first, and then I come back over top of that with shadow gray once the brown has dried. All right, so next I'm moving on to the corner trim, and I've got these, they've been double dipped in stain. Both started with the murky brown, then went over to the shadow gray. And from here, I think that whole red is a fairly close match to the color that my grandfather used, which was, I think, boxcar red. And so I'm gonna use that and that sponge there, and we're gonna sponge that onto the corner trim. That'll be our next move. So with sponge painting, y'all have probably seen this elsewhere too, but you get the sponge in the paint, kind of rough the sponge up a little first, get it in the paint, get most of it off, and then in a controlled way, you're just adding little bits of paint over top of that stained material. So I'm kind of getting in close so I can see what I'm doing with my eyes. But again, it's almost dry, so dropping the sponge there, I didn't get extra paint anywhere. No harm, no foul on that. So I'm just kind of rotating. This is a four-sided square board. I know we're zoomed out a little bit. It's hard to see exactly what's going on, but getting each side, looking at it. I don't want to get too much coverage here, and then just flipping around here to get the last little inch or two where I was holding it the first go. So up close, that's the effect you get with getting that wood stain first and then sponging on some paint. So that's not attached yet. Obviously I've got to cut that to fit, but I think I've got a pretty good color match. And you can see the distress that we added to the wood that my grandfather had painted all those years ago. He actually did follow the directions. They actually had you painting the side pieces before bracing it up, which was kind of interesting. All right, just a quick in progress here. Made some progress, as you can see. I've got the windows and all of their trim in. So the window trim around the tops and the sides, the trim on the edge of the building there, and then this stuff, this little horizontal piece that actually goes around the whole building as well. That was all cut from those 1/16 square wood pieces that you saw me stain and prep in the last segment. And then the windows themselves, it's acetate, but the little cross members are already printed onto the acetate, which is kind of a different way to do it. I hadn't seen that before. Coming up now, just following the instructions, this area below that horizontal member will actually get, this is kind of interesting, I've never seen this technique before, not yogurt, but I'm going to be gluing these rocks around the bottom of it. Came with the kit, so that'll give it like a stone foundation around the whole building. So this is kind of what it's looking like now. And those ends where I cut, I'll come back and add a little stain to that. There's more wood to be stained here, so when I have that stuff out again, I'll come in and dab on the ends there. But that's all just glued on with wood glue, used sparingly, trying not to show any glue marks or anything on the building, because that wouldn't be very realistic. But that's how it's coming together. I'm liking the look so far. So let me get these rocks glued on. The instructions say to use white glue, so I'll just use, I've got matte medium around, so I will use that. More to come. All right, got all the rocks glued around for the foundation, and I've got it setting in its approximate location on the layout here on the, as I pull out a little bit, that is the icing track right there, right in front of the yard. And the platform will end up running to about here, not much farther than that. So the yard ladder, which actually, there's the caboose track, the yard ladder doesn't actually start until here, that turnout there. So I'm gonna have, and I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna have plenty of room to work the yard ladder with my right hand and be nowhere near the end of that platform. And got some room down here for cars to be stored as things are iced and pushed through, etc. And yeah, I'm liking how that's coming along. The layout lighting there. Next steps are to start working on the roof, as well as the instructions say that the rocks should get a wash, and it talks about like a dark, like a black wash, like India ink or something. I'm probably going to use some things that have come out, I think, since this kit has. Some of the Vallejo model washes, and especially things like the green one, especially on the rocks that are close to the ground. Here on the East Coast, things, it's wet here, and rocks near the ground, etc., get moss and that kind of stuff on them. So that's the look I'm going to go for around the bottoms of it, as I also think about pivoting to the roof. All right, so I've got the wash on. You can see that rock on the bottom right in front of me. You can see some of the green hues coming through. I added, it's subtle, but boy, I tell you, when I first put this on, it got real dark, and I was like, uh-oh. But I know that as it dries, it lightens up a bit, and the colors look right. It looks weathered now. It was too bright before, so a little bit subtle, but that is what things are looking like. And I think I'm gonna go ahead, and before I get into the roof, I'm gonna stop here for this week and call that a good week's worth of work, and get going on the roof next week and see how far we get from there. So I appreciate you guys watching. Y'all be well, stay safe out there, and we'll see you next week.